The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Rob Callister, MHK for Onchan, is on the air today between now and 1 o'clock. If you want to get in touch, text, email, call and WhatsApp. Top the poll in Onchan in 2016 and in 2021. Member of the House of Keys from 2016 to date. Previously Onchan Commissioner, Chair of Onchan Commissioners. Faster, my good afternoon, Rob Callister.
Good afternoon, Andy, and thank you for the invitation.
No, not at all. It's good to... we're talking about Onchan and being chair of Onchan Commissioners as well. What's the current state of play around Onchan at the moment? How do you gauge the sense of it all?
Well, I think if you're talking concerns, I think there's still concerns around traffic flowing in and out of the village. There's still parking concerns. There's still the general condition of roads and pavement within the constituency. Obviously concerns about connecting our bus timetables to the community. Obviously dilapidated properties. There's been plenty of questions asked on these topics, but all of these need to be addressed before we even consider increasing our population. If you're talking about the local authority, I've followed it very closely, and I am concerned, same as a lot of other ratepayers in Onchan, how money is being spent in certain ways, and I would encourage the local authority to actually come together for the good of our community.
I'm not saying you're obsessed, Rob Callister, but you seem very focused on the constituents of Onchan. You phone people back within minutes sometimes.
I try to, because I am there. I'm elected by the people. I know, because
people have told me that.
Yeah, I'm elected by the people of Onchan, and if somebody rings me or takes the time and the courtesy to write to me about a topic that really does concern them, then I will either ring them or I will write back within 24 hours, regardless if I was a minister. I did the same last year in November, even when I was the health minister. I was writing emails at 5 o'clock at night and 11 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, or 11 o'clock at night. I am concerned about my constituents, and I do care when things concern them.
So in terms of what feedback are you getting? Is there any one issue in Onchan? Because there was an issue with antisocial behaviour at one time. Has that calmed down?
It has calmed down, but I know there was an incident over the weekend around fireworks being let off in the park area, and that has been reported to the police to investigate. But things have calmed down, and I think it's very important that we do not give those antisocial behaviour incidents too much fuel, and that to me was what I'm very, very careful about.
OK, let's get to the phones now. And Julian's on, first of all, with us. Hi, Julian. You're live with Rob Callister.
Hi, Andy, and hello, Rob.
Good afternoon, Julian.
Hiya. As former chairman of the MUA, I'm interested to hear your opinion on Reuters' headline from last week that the S&P credit rating agency, along with Fitch rating agency, are joining Moody's in downgrading Ørsted's credit rating. And issues also with Siemens Gamesa wind turbines are compounding the problem. Do you think the island's headlong rush into wind energy could mean financial ruin for the island if Ørsted and Siemens are a barometer of a collapsing renewables industry, as is being reported recently?
Well, I think we've just seen Moody's latest report, and it had the Isle of Man as a AAA negative, or it's around that area. So at the moment, I don't have any concerns. I think you raised on this programme many times, Julian, about how much the transformation from to green initiatives is going to cost this island. And I think that same concerns are rectified in the UK. So we do have to balance all of this out. But there's things that we can do as an island with hardly no cost and to improve our efficiency. And one of those is maybe look more at public transport, look at what type of energy we're using in the future, because I know there's a lot of discussions around wind farms at the moment, but there's alternative methods we can use. But I have listened very closely to all of the comments you've made, and unfortunately I do not have the depth of knowledge as you, unfortunately, on some of these topics.
Okay, what do you think, Julian?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm puzzled about is the MUA's procurement plan. Putting down deposits on wind turbines when, I mean, realistically, you've got a wind measurement unit up at Erie Staine, but not up at Druidale, which was the other possible site, which seems strange because you can't ever compare one year with another. I mean, if you remember 2020, when the lockdowns, it was a beautiful summer. The summer was gorgeous, if you remember, whereas not quite so nice this year with a rainy July. So you can never compare. So the methodology of putting down money on, there's going to be several £1 million, I would imagine, in a down payment, even if you're trying to get into the order list. And that's even before the environmental impact assessment has even hardly got started. It just seems that there seems to be money that we don't have is getting thrown at wind energy on the island, whereas if you actually look anywhere outside of the island, there's major problems. I mean, America is turning them down. The UK's not done any single bids for any of them from RWE or EDF. They're not offering them any money. So it looks like Ørsted, Vattenfall and Equinor, they're in serious problems at the moment. So if that's kind of the way that the wind energy industry is going, there doesn't seem to be anybody pressing the brake on it over here at the moment, it seems.
Okay.
Julian, if I can just come in on, I think it's absolutely right that we do those sonic detection and ranging devices up in Erie Staine just to look and see what the wind speed actually is over a 12-month period. So I do support that. The question is later on, they're proposing 5 turbines, possibly generating up to 130, I think, gigawatts of energy per year, which could potentially represent a third of the island's annual demand. But as you say, there's also some brilliant private enterprise projects. Now, I've got a recent presentation, one at the north of the island. So I think it's going to end up having a mixture. The question is, what does the island want? And to me, I'm not sure at the moment. I sit very firmly on the fence because if I had a choice between on island or off island, I'd probably go off island. But I need to see the evidence before making a firm decision on behalf of the island.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Julian.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Okay, on the same tack, really, a note in from Richie on 776 just saying, first of all, we have no loyal opposition here, so ex-ministers like Rob Callister and Chris Thomas, who know how government business is carried on, is good to interrogate current ministers. So I heard Tim Crookall say that Erie Staine isn't Heathland. I don't believe that's the case. There's some overlay of current land usage there, but I recall the 1990s All-Island Habitat Survey designated Erie Staine as heathland, temporarily covered with conifers. So when modern planting is removed, the land reverts to its official prescribed natural state of heathland. So scrutiny and detail are important. Overall, on renewables, do you think we're moving in the right direction?
I think we are, but the question is what direction. And I always use the analogy around the VHS and the Betamax. What we don't want to do is go down the wrong path. And the question is, we've got to look at the evidence, we've got to look at what is best for our island, not necessarily what's best for the UK. We are a small island that generates a set amount of, needs a set amount of energy every year. The question is how we generate that. And I've always, even when I was the MUA chair, I was firmly of the opinion that the second cable shouldn't go into England but should maybe go into Scotland, even though I accept there may be higher infrastructure costs. That then spreads our sort of access into the UK, and that to me I felt was quite important. But I know the second connector is possibly going to go into England and Wales, and to me I do have a little bit of concern on that particular point.
Okay, here's a message in from Pammy. Hi Pammy, who says, I commend Joni Farragher for writing to Alf Cannon to show support for a ceasefire in Gaza. Does Rob Callister have any opinion on this particular subject?
Yeah, I'm happy to go on the record to say I also support a ceasefire. It has to happen. But at the same time, the 240 hostages need to be released. The question is really what happens next. We're almost certain that Israel will refuse to return to a status quo position. So the question, and that's, they have done that I think the last 4 times this sort of incident has happened since 2007. So I feel there's countries like Egypt and Jordan will have to play a significant role. to cement long-term peace in the area. But, as for our own government, a small island in the Irish Sea, I'm not sure what influence we can play on that. But I personal level, yes, to the ceasefire, but at the same time, those 240 hostages need to be released.
I'm not suggesting a direct parallel, but as you say, the amount of influence we can exert on a global scale is limited. Yeah. And that's almost a note in from Barbara just saying in terms of renewable energy, the amount of our carbon footprint on the Isle of Man is absolutely tiny. So really, does it matter that we make efforts towards renewables when we could just get electricity from England?
Absolutely. I think it is important that we do take our own journey towards a greener future. And in respect of maybe tapping into the UK, I'm not in favour of that, because we've only got to look at what happened in the Channel Islands with France, where there was threats all over the place. And that is one of the reasons why I feel that if we are going to have a second connector into the UK, it should maybe not be into England, but maybe somewhere like Scotland or even Republic of Ireland, which gives us a firm choice. And then what we can do is, we know Scotland has a massive amount of renewable. So instantly, when we're looking from a carbon footprint, if we went into Scotland, our green initiatives would actually increase significantly straight away.
Okay. Hi, Stephen. Hello, Stephen. Thanks for calling. You're live with Rob Callister, MHK.
Hello, Andy. Hello, Rob, and hello, listeners. If I could ask you to consider one of the moves tomorrow by Mr. Hooper, Rob, is the removal of the Bishop's vote in Tynwald. Now, on first look at this matter, it might think it's just simply a situation of removing a religious person from the Tynwald Court, but I think it's much more than that. And if we go back to the Lord Lisvane report, which was only in 2016, there was never, we looked at having a major change to our constitution and makeup of Tynwald, and there was certainly no recommendation from Lord Lisvane to remove the Bishop's vote. Now, I think some members of Tynwald, certainly the Keys, may just think, oh yes, let's remove the Bishop's vote from Tynwald, and that's it. But I think it's a much broader and wider problem, in as much as we are reducing the voting numbers of Tynwald Court, which has, of all the islands around the coast of Britain, which are dependencies, we have one of the smallest legislatures in any event, and to reduce the number of those who can vote, I think needs further scrutiny. And I think really that just to consider it in isolation as the Bishop's vote, I think is wrong, because it's contentious in many aspects. And I note that today it's been reported that the Speaker wants to use a very rarely used protocol to consider the work permit removal. So I wonder what you think. Would you agree that it's far wider than just the simple issue of the removal of the Bishop's vote? It's meddling once again with Tynwald and its makeup, and we don't know the lot of unintended consequences. So for me, tomorrow, I do hope that the members really think about this issue. It's not just one of taking religion out of politics. It's a very important matter of the makeup of Tynwald and the numbers who are eligible to vote.
Yeah, Steve, thank you so much for the question. I think you're right. We have to be careful of the unknown consequence around this. We know that in June this year, the vote was, I think it was 14-10 in the Keys, and that is why the Honourable Member is moving this. I personally will not be supporting it tomorrow, and one of the reasons I won't be supporting is because I think our focus between now and the election in 2026 needs to be absolutely around the island plan. Instead of just looking at these small little areas, this is significant in the island's culture, the history, but our focus for the next 3 years really needs to be delivering the island plan and not messing around or taking drafters' time dealing with things around the Bishop's vote, which I really genuinely don't believe it is very high on anybody's agenda except for a couple of people.
Yes, I would agree with that, and I also hope that you have success tomorrow in moving that the assisted dying legislation goes to a committee, because I do not think that that also has been given sufficient consideration. I agree with you; it should go to a committee.
I thank you, Stephen. The reason why I'm moving the committee is because I don't agree with all of the legislation. As I put on social media yesterday, my first obligation is to listen and to represent the views of constituents, which I did by supporting the second reading. The second part is that I have a duty as an elected member to ensure that any legislation being passed in the House of Keys absolutely is the best legislation we can produce. And I'll give you one example of what I will talk about tomorrow. I'm really seriously concerned about clause 11, which relates to inquests, death certifications, and how they will have an effect on insurance policies. And that, to me, cannot be discussed in a whole committee of the House. And I'll be hopefully putting that argument to my colleagues tomorrow. And that is one of the reasons why I want them to support a committee being set up to look in very close detail around some of these clauses.
Stephen?
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with everything. So I do hope that the removal of the bishop's vote for the reasons I've outlined, and I do hope that your motion is supported as well.
OK, all right. Thanks, Stephen. Good to hear from you. What's been the feedback from your constituents regarding assisted dying?
Well, back in May, June this year, I put out a call for people to give me their opinion, to guide me and to steer me. And I had over 370 people. I checked them all off the voters' register to make sure that, they were there. And I think it was about 65 to 70%, if not a little bit higher, said absolutely yes. They would like to see some form of legislation introduced in respect of assisted dying. Now, since then, we've had quite a lot of lobbying against the legislation, which is fine. I respect every single person that's wrote to me. And as I've just said to Stephen there, it's absolutely right that we support the legislation, but from this point on, we have to make sure that legislation is correct.
The part of the people who are against it, part of their argument is secondary legislation and, as you mentioned, unintended consequences. So can you be a bit more specific about the inquest clause there? Yeah,
so as you say, without seeing the secondary legislation, it's really hard to see how all of this legislation would work in practice. So one of the concerns I have relates to the inquests and death certifications. How, if somebody accesses the assisted dying, how that would be recorded, how it may work within any inquest that's held. Because according to Dr. Allinson, that if you are you about to die within 6 months and you access the assisted dying bill, if you then access this and take the assisted dying route, then the cause that you had originally, say for example cancer, would be the item that is recorded on your death certificate. What I'm seriously worried about, and what I'm trying to make sure I'm absolutely right for my constituents and for the people of this island, is that death certificate, even though it's recorded, it doesn't get challenged by an insurance company. I want to be absolutely sure that if somebody has a life insurance or somebody has a mortgage insurance policy, that suddenly we don't find a case on the Isle of Man where an insurance company has refused to pay out because the person has taken this route. And I want to be very clear on that. This isn't about me throwing this policy or this legislation into the long grass. This is about making sure that I'm protecting my constituents in Onchan and the people of this island.
Surely we've had negotiations. Surely we've had a steer from the insurance companies about this.
Dr. Allinson has sent members a correspondence this morning on that from the British Association of Insurers, and I will mention that in a bit more detail tomorrow, Andy. What we've done differently here on the Isle of Man in respect of assisted dying, if we look at our colleagues in Jersey, they started with an e-petition in 2018. They then went on to a citizens' jury, and what they did is they brought everybody together, listened to all of the concerns, and only in 2024 are they going to start looking to draft legislation. That to me is the most important thing. What we've done is draft the legislation, and we're now trying to put everyone together in order to support the draft legislation as written. And a number of colleagues in the Keys do have concerns about certain clauses within the bill.
Eddie's with us now. Hi, Eddie. You're live with Rob Callister.
Hi, Rob. Andy. I was listening to Julian earlier, mentioning about the Heathland, whether it is or whether it isn't. Everybody up here seems to think it's always been Heathland. There was a few things I mentioned on Friday about this. There was the Heathland, is it or isn't it? The flooding. I don't think the government have even considered what it would cause for flooding. But one of the main reasons I was on is because on Friday I forgot to mention that the MUA are now doing a survey in Casttown Bay. Right, the lady came on from the MUA not long back and said there's no way, it's stupid rumours and things like this. Just to point out again that there's a survey going on at the moment. It seems to be right in the area that we were talking about, and it is a protected area. Two other things. If all this goes ahead with the turbines, we would probably lose our dark skies and our biosphere. So all that would be in jeopardy, wouldn't it?
Well, we don't know whether or not the biosphere, I think, will be changed. They've not said anything, have they, Rob Callister?
I'm not aware of it, and I think the concerns around whether it's Heathland or not Heathland, I think the one good thing that the people of Arbury, Maloo and Castletown have, they've got two great MHKs that are asking a raft of questions on this on behalf of their constituents. So I think they are well placed to get to the bottom exactly what's happening in this area, and either to support it or to oppose it.
Okay, all right, that's great. Thanks, Eddie. Good to hear from you today. Here's another one now. Oh, this is regarding Onchan. Malcolm says, can you please ask Rob Callister, has he been to the hub to recycle anything recently? I very much doubt it, as you have to paddle through a very large puddle to reach the bins. Also, the speed bump at the entrance needs painting, as we've seen several drivers bouncing across it. It's not very visible. And the Onchan village traffic lights are still out of sync.
Yeah, okay, I can pick both of those up. Yes, I do recycle. Not always in Onchan. It depends where I am going. Grandstand sometimes Tesco. Sometimes at the community hub when I'm holding my political surgeries. Happy to pick up the speed bump with the commissioners and happy to look at the water flow. It's not a problem at all on that. Okay. And the other point he just raised, what was the second point he just raised?
The speed bump, the entrance, several drivers back. Oh, Onchan village traffic lights out of sync.
And the traffic lights, I've asked a question. I've already put that on social media. It would cost the best part of £30,000 to £50,000 to replace them. They said they will do it when this one comes to the end of its natural life. Okay. But I have raised those concerns so many times.
This is about confidence in the government. The government, obviously, if they're throwing money into people like Orsted, obviously you've got, in the background, there are things like the TT merchandise fiasco. We've got the Liverpool dock and things like that are moving. So surely, this is John, it just requires more deliberation before we're putting all our eggs in the wind farm basket.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've got to take a lot more care over the taxpayers' money, how we spend them, where we spend them, because money is getting tighter. We can all see that through the cost of living crisis, and that includes government costs as well that continue to increase.
A note in from Andy just says, I agree 100% with Rob regarding the Bishop. Laurie Hooper and the others wanting the removal of the Bishop vote is clearly don't have the best economic interests of the people as a priority. It should be removed at the next election. Well, that's down to the voters in Ramsey and elsewhere. There was a mention that obviously if the Bishop's vote went, then the kind of bishopric might disappear, as in the bishop may get downgraded. The
role of the soldier of man may be, as you say, downgraded or removed altogether. So we've got to be really careful. I know some people are modernisers. They want a parliament that's very modern, but we've got to really step back and think about our history, our culture. We have the oldest continuous parliament. Okay, it might be small, but it's unique. We've passed some serious legislation throughout our history, and we have to be very careful what we do. And only in recent years I've realised I'm more of a modernist sort of person, where I like the tradition, the feel of everything we do as part of this role. And I just think at the moment, I think if you ask the people of this island, they don't care about the Bishop's vote. They want things to change for the better on this island.
A note in from Dick, who said, Rob just mentioned dilapidated properties, many of which are empty, but more are inhabited and in a dreadful condition, with tons of rubbish and abandoned vehicles with roof racks on and things like that. If they were government-owned, they'd have been repaired years ago, but you ask the commissioners to look at them and nothing's ever done. Could you ask Rob, is it about time responsibility for doing something about dilapidated properties, be they inhabited or not, is given to DEFRA or the DOI or Environmental Health, whoever you like really, just away from the commissioners who don't act. Meanwhile, everyone else's house value drops and entire estates look run down because of one or two bad apples.
I think he's absolutely right, and I thank Dick for his question, because dilapidated properties are an eyesore on our community, on our island. There is a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and I've been heavily involved in getting legislation, getting regulations changed to deal with dilapidated properties, but there is legal loopholes that keep getting jumped into and taken out, so we need to look at that. I think he's absolutely right with regard to the costs, but the problem is on the local authority. If they pursue somebody who has got a dilapidated property, then those funds come out off the rate, and it can cost tens of thousands of pounds. We know that by some cases that Douglas Corporation have actually had to deal with, and that, if you take Onchan, if it's £7,500 spent, that's 1p on every single person's rates. So they've got to balance all of this out, pursue people, try to do it sympathetically and encouraging people to bring their properties up to a satisfactory standard, or then pursue it for the courts. Government could do a lot more by getting tougher legislation in place, bringing in that vacant property officer, which is something I've asked for in the past, in order to help local authorities. All of that is coming. So hopefully people will see the change within, I don't know, the next year, 18 months.
OK. Oh, Eddie, you got a question for Rob Callister. Eddie?
Yes, I hadn't quite finished, but one of the questions I wanted to ask him, the main one really, was he actually said earlier on, stated that he would prefer offshore than onshore. And what does he think of this morning? Rishi Sunak has announced that he is, because nobody's interested in taking on the wind farms in the North Sea and so on, he's actually thinking of opening more gas and oil mines to cover all this. And for the lady who was on earlier, the percentage is 0.8 of 1% is the element. What do you think, Rob?
Well, OK, let's just bring this back, Eddie. I think if we had a choice of building some on land or within our 12-mile water sort of area, then I would probably go for that. I would probably support a solar farm in the north of the island. And in respect of the UK tender, I think if I remember seeing an article on this, the tender process was flawed, and that is why none of the energy companies wanted to get involved, because it just didn't make money for them. So again, we've got to be very careful how we do them. I still believe we're going to have a mixture of everything. We're going to have a solar farm, we're probably going to have some, wind on land, and we're going to have some off island as well, but within our territorial waters.
OK, all right, thanks, Eddie.
OK.
All right, which brings me then, regarding fossil fuels, to Crogga. What's the situation? What's the latest with Crogga?
I don't know much about it other than what everyone else has read. I've always been very firm. I want to see some evidence, what is actually in the ground. Can it be taken out safely? If Crogga does work and it can actually help us achieve our green initiatives in the future, then I want to see the evidence before I make the final decision.
OK, a message in. By the way, Manx Will, who's sending in a couple of messages. Everything's fragmenting, Will. If you want to give us a call, then by all means we'll put you straight on air. But unfortunately, your messages are fragmenting to about 10 different parts. Juan's on now. Hi, Juan. You're live with Rob Callister.
How are you, Andy? Rob, how are you today?
Juan, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Couple of questions for you, Rob. Couple of diverse questions. First of all, on the wind turbines, and we keep hearing about wind turbines like it's a done deal. That seems to be the the text that we're getting back from government. And as you quite rightly said, we have to be very, very careful now watching the pennies, because people have been spending them like we've got we've got a forest full of money trees. And it concerns me on the actual load bearing that we're going to get, the base loads from these wind turbines. I believe that at the moment, that's come from an FOI. I think the MUA are producing us over 3 million excess in electricity, which is getting sold down to the grid at the moment to pay off the debt from the MU. And I'm looking at the interconnector cable, and we're talking about self-sustainability. I don't kind of see that self-sustainability. I'd like to ask you the question on the power of why is everyone seems to be avoiding the talk about geothermal. Is this purely because this is money-driven and politically driven to do the wind turbines and nothing else? Because as far as I can see, talking to people within the geothermal industry, it seems to be the God-given way to go forward, which is going to be better for us as a nation for many, many years. And looking at the amount of licenses that's now getting issued for that, I find it disturbing that the government will not make a comment on this. They just keep going on about the wind turbines. My second question, I'll give you this one as well, with your previous Manx Care head on. I don't know whether you can remind me of the actual price of the vaccination hub, how much it cost us to put the vaccination hub in Douglas. That's just a one-off question, but I wanted to ask you about the running of Manx Care and its problems within middle and higher management that I'm hearing about. Lack of experience. People are actually already looking to move on from their job positions and have no interest here. So I was looking for your views on both them subjects.
Okay, I can quickly pick on a couple of those, Duran. I think if my dad's listening, I think he'll be absolutely over the moon that you've mentioned geothermal, because every time he rings me, he keeps telling me about geothermal. But to be honest, I'm not within government, I'm not in DEFRA or Manx Utilities, but from a personal point of view, I think geothermal should be reviewed, and I think we should look at all energy options to see what's the best option for the Isle of Man. I think you're absolutely right. In respect to the vaccination hub, I don't know what the cost was for the Chester Street site or the one at the airport. You have to remember we had one at the airport as well. I think you're absolutely right around Manx Care and the retention of staff, and I think it goes right across the board. We need to bring people to the island. Our health service needs people. How we recruit them, I don't know, because this then goes on to a wider topic around housing, connectivity back and forth from the UK to the Isle of Man. It really does open a raft of questions. We've got to make ourselves more appealable to people that we desperately need, those highly skilled professionals that we need for our island. We really do, because if not, we'll be paying more bank staff and agency costs, probably 2, 3, 4 times as much as we should by recruiting somebody long term. So these are all the big questions that the Health Minister should be focused on at the moment.
Yeah, I agree exactly what you're saying there. It's costing us a lot of money in bank, and people, from what I can gather, are not wanting to sign up with Manx Care because they're quite happy to take the extra money that they're getting, plus the relocation fees and the travelling back home every month fees, etc. So I totally agree with you, and there seems to be a disconnect there why people are not signing in with Manx Care. And back onto the accommodation, that was also a big problem seemingly, because the lodgings at the hospital are over accommodated, and people are now struggling. A lot of people that are coming over to work for Manx Care are now struggling to get accommodation because Manx Care are not giving them long leases, and consequently they can't get a short lease on accommodation. So yeah, there is a disconnect there somewhere. So I don't know. I was just looking for your opinion. You're the people with the knowledge. I'm not.
Right. I'm not in DFE, but as I say, when I was in there, it was really highly focused that we do need to sort out our housing. Rental properties in particular, because it's very hard to find half decent accommodation for less than £1,000, £1,100, £1,200 at the moment, and that to me is a concern for us all, because we need the skills on the island. They need housing. They need to get the connectivity back and forth from the UK until they settle into island life. There's a lot of conversations, and I'm just disappointed that I'm not given that opportunity at the moment to actually to play my part in trying to have those conversations and to resolve those problems for the island.
Okay, thanks, Stuart.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
We're 19 minutes before 1 now.
Walk through the northern lights into a land of ice and snow at Ramsey Garden Centre. Indoor and outdoor lights, a magical range of real and artificial trees, decorations, gifts and much more. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, Albert Road.
The festive time of the year is all about getting together, family and friends, while celebrating, drinking and eating. Until silence can be deafening. At any point, children and adults can choke. Would you know what to do? Be prepared. Get trained. St John Ambulance can help. We have courses from as little as £30 per person. Call now on 674 387.
Have you seen Skipton's savings rates? They're offering a fixed rate of 5.65% gross AER when depositing £50,000 or more. The account matures on the 15th of January 2025.
Wow, that's much more than my bank's paying on my savings.
It's time to switch to Skipton. Call 730 730 or visit skiptoninternational.com. No withdrawals allowed until maturity. Interest is paid annually and upon maturity. Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the GFSC and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. Details at dcs.gg.
Find stunning Christmas gifts at Ramsey Art Gallery, jewellers and engravers.
With beautiful artwork, including prints and original paintings.
There's gold and silver jewellery and watches from Citizen, Bolivar and Storm.
Plus Seconda, Accurist and Timex. Includes free lifetime watch bracelet adjustment with purchase.
Make gifts extra personal with an engraved message. Or if you find it hard to choose, then a gift voucher is the perfect answer.
Get Christmas all wrapped up at Ramsey Art Gallery or see ramseyartgallery.com.
Would you be able to tell the difference between music composed and created by artificial intelligence and tunes made by humans? The world of AI continues to be a driving force, making changes to the way we could be working in the future. So how will it affect the music industry? Listen into AI versus the music industry. Tomorrow from 6, here on Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Onchan MHK Rob Callister is live today. There's a message in from Ollie who just says, could the Onchan MHK please tell us what is happening at Onchan Stadium? Are the stock cars staying or going? Will there be more football pitches? Who knows?
I'm not aware of any significant change happening with Onchan Park, but I'm not in the commissioners. But I do read their minutes, and I'm not aware of anything happened significantly in the future.
Okay, but the Onchan Stadium, it does come under Onchan commissioners.
It does. The running of that does, and as I say, they still have the stock car racing there, which is a great attraction into the village.
Okay, a message also, thank you, Nigel, who just says, regarding the vaping legislation that's coming in when is it actually going to happen? What
I don't think we've had.
At?
I think it's just going through the clauses stage. I think that's the next one. We've gone through the first reading, second reading, so I think we're at the clauses stage.
Right.
I think most people are absolutely right that we bring this in. I think a lot of people are very seriously concerned that children, I should say, are using vaping when they've never actually smoked. This was meant to be a way of taking people from cigarettes down to vaping, then off cigarettes completely. And I'm absolutely fully in support of the age being lifted to make sure that it's out of the reach of most children.
But putting our children, surely, is there any way this can be hurried up? Because children are inhaling this toxic stuff.
Absolutely, and it's quite strange when you're walking through the Strand Street, you smell strawberries and everything else which comes off them. It's quite a strange sort of concept because it gives this pleasant sort of smell, but it's for most people they shouldn't be using it, especially when they haven't smoked in their life before.
Yeah, some parents are pulling their hair out about this.
They are. It's coming, and as I say, if it can come quicker, then I think we'd all agree on that.
Okay, Neil. Hi, Neil. You're live with Rob Callister.
Good afternoon, Andy, and good afternoon to Mr. Callister. Firstly, Mr. Callister, on behalf of all the Manx people that I work with down here, I would like to say a huge thank you for leading the charge on the retention of our work permit system. we think it's absolutely fundamental and essential for the retention of Manx jobs that this is retained on the statute book. The main point I'm coming on really, well, that was one of the main points. But the other point I would like to raise is, I'd like your views on how we are going to cope with the huge input of population. We're obviously struggling now with our infrastructure. Our water system is under pressure. Anybody who goes by boat via the Mary Veg site will see slicks of sewage now running into the sea. I have a friend living at Kerristal, Keith, who reports to me quite regularly that sewage is now getting washed up onto the beach at Kerristal. I used to work with Mr. Bernard Irving, who was senior government analyst, and one of the projects which Bernard handled in the mid-70s was how the island was going to cope following the 2 years of very bad drought we had here. And government at that time decided to invest in the Salty Well Reservoir. They also put in a new hospital, and they also put in the IRA scheme, which was going to be all island, but obviously it was always a very long shot, the transportation of waste from Bride through to Mary Veg. However, and this is the important point, the island had a population at that time of around about 48 to 52,000, and those schemes were put in place as a sort of a fail gap system for a maximum population of 80,000. That was the proviso at that time. This is about 1974, 75. We have gone past that now. The system is under pressure, and yet Mr. Cannon and his cohort of ministers seem to think that by bringing in thousands of people to the island, we are going to increase the economic output and make things better. I think it will absolutely destroy the value and the quality of life which we have here now. So I would like to hear what your viewpoint is on that topic, please.
Okay, Neil, thank you so much for your question. You're absolutely right. I fully support the Isle of Man work permit legislation that's been in place since 1952. It has protected the Manx working population. That doesn't mean people born on the Isle of Man. That is our working population here today. I would just clarify that I'm not expecting a massive spike in the island's population if we remove work permits. My concerns are slightly wider and deeper than that, and that is, you're absolutely right about the population growth. It would be, my concerns relate to the unskilled labour that may be coming into the island. If somebody comes here with no skills and they get a job, brilliant. But firstly, how are they going to be able to find accommodation? We've just talked about not being able to find much accommodation on the island for less than £1,000 a month. We've got to remember that most people who will be coming in from England, from the Channel Islands, from Northern Ireland, these are unskilled positions. Most of them will be offering the minimum wage, which is around £10.85 an hour, which makes around about £23,000 per annum. You try and find accommodation of around £1,000 at the moment on those figures. It just doesn't stack up. So I'm absolutely fully supportive of retaining our work permit legislation. We've also got to remember, according to the data, there was around 234 people registered unemployed, but the actual number of people looking for work on the island is around 680, and we've got 700 jobs. 200 of those are highly skilled within our medical profession. Then you have to look at the other skills that are already exempt. So there is if you are out of work on the Isle of Man here today, it is very difficult to find a job straight away, and then to find a job that actually pays your mortgage, to pay your bills. And this is the reason why we need to continue to protect our working population.
Do you think this is going to encourage unscrupulous employers?
I think it could create a lot of unknown consequences, and I'm seriously concerned about what happens if we do remove it. And I would encourage everyone to listen to my speech, but have a cushion ready, because I think my speech on work permits, if it's is around 25 minutes long, and the evidence shows that the Isle of Man does not need to remove our work permit system. We are naturally growing our population. Even the Chief Minister's mid-term statement very clearly says that we're issuing work permits, we're issuing immigration visas to people to come here and work. Everything is happening naturally, as it has done since 1952. We do not need to remove our work permits today.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Neil. Good to hear from you.
Okay. Could I just make one more point, please?
Okay.
Just one quick point. I think one of the main issues, Mr. Callister, is the lack of legislation regarding buy-to-let housing and the rental market. We're losing about a third of our working population, a third of our young people here every year, and that is obviously unsustainable. And I think the crux of that is that there is no legislation preventing people from buying up large rafts of accommodation and renting it out at extortionate rates. That has the two impacts. One is keeping house prices artificially high, and secondly, it's forcing young people to leave the island. The very people that we need are being forced away. But I do agree with your comments, and thank you very, very much for your support on the work permit scheme.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, thanks for that.
Can I just come back on one point you've made there?
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right about the buy-to-let and the second homes. We need to really understand what is happening in our property market. We know that the island's population has not increased. The number of properties available on the island has increased a little bit over the last 15 years. So we should have enough properties on the island. You're absolutely right that we are losing 50% of our students each year. We need to make this island more attractive for them to return to the island.
9 minutes before 1 now. We're live with Rob Callister, MHK.
Whatever your business, whatever its size, you can always rely on the island's leading fuel and oil supplier to keep you moving. Ellen Vannin Fuels, powering the island and powering industry. Call us on 844 000.
Island Hearing Limited, your local hearing care specialist since 2009, with branches in Port Erin and Ramsey. We provide the very latest hearing aid technology available, which you can try at home, with excellent aftercare and a wax removal service available using microsuction. Give us a ring on 830 722 or visit Island Hearing at One Station Road, Port Erin. We're happy to help. Island Hearing, always listening.
Gift a gadget to your nana, fa la 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 la.
This Christmas, unwrap the gift of endless possibilities when you buy any smartphone with a Smart Unlimited plan over 36 months from Manx Telecom. And bag yourself a free gift worth up to £299. That's one gift for you and one for Nana. Tech the halls this Christmas with Manx Telecom. Visit mt.im/Christmas for details.
The Isle of Man is an island like no other, with so much to experience this autumn and winter right on your doorstep. Discover exciting activities, attractions, accommodation and food at discounted rates at visitisleofman.com/OYD23.
Strandvets.com. Taking on new equine patients. Prompt appointments, test results, instant x-rays, horse health plan from $18.50 a month, dental care and more. Call Strand Vets on 835 424.
The Coosh drew to a close yesterday after yet another successful week of events associated with the Manx language. So what do those attending this Manx Language Festival think about the language and its place in island life? Find out on Agenda this evening at 6 p.m. on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan. The language has grown both in numbers of speakers, learning resources and activities over the past 3 decades, but how relevant is it to modern life in the Isle of Man? Is it, as some suggest, a waste of time and money, or does it hold an essential place at the heart of Manx culture and identity? No prizes for guessing what I think.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Here's a message in from... Thank you, Crystal. I'd like to ask Rob, what's his opinion about the pandemic treaty amendments, and is our government voting us out of the World Health Organization treaty amendments before December, when we have all control removed by them if we're not opted out, says Crystal.
I have to apologise to Crystal. I have not researched that, but I'm happy to pick it up after the show and have a good look where the Isle of Man actually sits in that process.
Okay, Crystal, yes, I'll be even more blunt than Rob. I don't even understand the question, but Crystal, if you'd like to send me anything on that, then I'll happily read up on that. Just regarding, we've got so many messages coming in. I haven't got to all of them. Just briefly on this last one and you've talked about care leavers, people who are leaving the care system, and how we're coping with them or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I came through the care system myself. I'm very passionate about that as an elected member. I would encourage people to listen to my speech in Tynwald, because it really does lay open what's gone on in this report. It is not acceptable. Things have to change as a priority. Government needs to listen, and we need legislation, and we need to support care leavers leaving care. in respect of jobs, accommodation, welfare. We have got a duty. We are failing young children on this island, especially those in care.
Okay, that's costing us money anyway, but it's wasting children's lives. Obviously, adolescent treatments, adult therapies, we got the criminal justice sector, unemployment payments, welfare benefits, wasted lives. This is going to cost money, though, Rob Callister.
Absolutely, and I think it's money well spent, because if you take the committee, Tynwald committee, that had a raft of recommendations, 21 recommendations in 2018/19, if some of those were implemented, then there's kids or children, young adults left care in the last 4 years that we would have helped nurture, who would have had the right foundation into adult life. A lot of them would be in careers and settling down into life on the Isle of Man. We've failed them. We need to make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
Okay, I just want to ask you personally, because you mentioned about coming through the care system, that loneliness of being a child when you can't see anything in the future. Now, you straightened your life out. You've got yourself a very good career now.
Yes, but I've got to remember that I had two fantastic social workers that supported me in my young child, especially in my teenage years. But a million people took a chance on me again and again and again. And as I'll mention in my speech in Tynwald, sometimes people need 2, 3 or 4 chances to succeed. People have got to take those chances, but in return we've got to give people chances. We are letting children in care down, and I want to see that improved in this administration.
Okay, Rob Callister is going to be back in the new year with Julie Edge. We got a special Onchan MHK Mannin Line towards the end of January. In the meantime, I'll say a very Merry Christmas, Rob Callister.
Merry Christmas, Andy, and everybody else.
Good to hear from you. Rob Callister, MHK, with us today. Open line tomorrow, so if you want to follow up on anything that's been mentioned today, manninline@manxradio.com or the answer phone 682-631 out of hours, or call, text, email or WhatsApp tomorrow. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today.
WINT